Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another journey back in time. And today we're heading to Mesopotamia, one of the true powerhouses of early civilization.
Oh, Mesopotamia. Endless stories and discoveries. We're going to have fun.
I know, I'm excited.
It's incredible what they accomplished. You think about it. This was one of the four cradles of civilization.
Wow. Alongside places like ancient Egypt?
Exactly. The Indus Valley, ancient China. It's a pretty impressive club to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's paint a picture for our listeners. Where exactly was Mesopotamia?
All right. So picture this modern day Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Syria, even Kuwait, parts of all these countries. That's where Mesopotamia once thrived.
So we're talking about the land between rivers.
That's the one, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Those rivers were a life. They were unpredictable, but with some seriously clever irrigation, they turned that land into a fertile paradise.
That's what I love about these ancient civilizations. Their ingenuity, their ability to adapt and overcome.
They had to. They didn't have it easy. But that challenge led to some incredible innovations. But before we jump into all that, let's talk timeline. We got to give our listeners a sense of the historical scope.
Okay, so where do we begin?
Well, the story starts way back with the Neolithic Revolution, around 10,000 BC.
That's when humans made that monumental shift from hunting and gathering to settled agriculture.
You got it. It was a complete game changer. Villages popped up, then cities. And from there, well, the rest is history.
Literally. So what happened after that?
Well, buckle up because things are about to get interesting. That brings us to the era of early dynasties and empires.
Okay, give us the dates.
Roughly from 3100 to 539 BC, a period marked by constant shifts in power. You had the Sumerians, brilliant innovators.
They gave us writing, math, astronomy.
All of that and more. They were organized into these fascinating city-states. Then came the Akkadians.
Who were they?
They were the ones who united those Sumerian city-states, formed the first true empire in the region.
Power move. So Mesopotamia was always a hotbed of activity.
Always. But it didn't stop there. You also had the rise of the Babylonian and Assyrian empires, each leaving their own mark.
Okay, so tell me about the Babylonians.
Well, you've probably heard of Hammurabi's Code.
Of course. One of the earliest sets of written laws.
Exactly. It was revolutionary. It wasn't just about punishment. It was a framework for a just and organized society.
Wow, so these early civilizations were already grappling with ideas of justice and social order?
Oh, absolutely. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Okay, so what happened after the Babylonians?
Buckle up. This next chapter is a wild ride. From 539 BC to the 7th century, AD Mesopotamia was constantly being absorbed into other empires.
Like who?
You name it. The Achaemenids, the Romans. It was a time of conquests, transformations, outside influences. Everything was in flux. Eventually, it became part of the Islamic Caliphate, and well, that was a whole new chapter.
Yeah, it sounds like Mesopotamia was a crossroads, a melting pot of cultures and ideas.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into what made them so influential. What were some of the most important innovations that came out of Mesopotamia?
Well, without a doubt, the wheel. That's the big one.
Talk about a game changer.
Transportation, trade warfare. Everything was revolutionized.
I can't imagine a world without the wheel.
Exactly. It's one of those inventions that shaped the course of human history. But let's not forget about another major Mesopotamian breakthrough, cuneiform writing.
Using wedge-shaped marks on clay tablets.
Precisely. That's how they kept records, told stories, passed down knowledge. It's the ancestor of all writing systems we use today.
That's amazing. So they were innovators in so many fields. What else were they known for?
Their math and astronomy were phenomenal.
Really? Tell me more.
They were working with a base 60-number system.
Wait, so that's where our 60-minute hour comes from?
That's right. And the 24-hour day, it's all thanks to those ancient Mesopotamians.
Mind-blowing.
It is, right. And it doesn't
that-
stop there. They were also masters of geometry. And get this, they could even predict eclipses.
No way. How is that even possible without modern technology?
It boggles the mind, right? They were incredibly advanced.
Okay, I gotta know. What was daily life like for a Mesopotamian? What were their beliefs? What was their culture like?
Well, religion played a huge role. They were polytheistic, meaning they believed in many gods.
So like a whole pantheon.
Exactly. And these gods were connected to nature cities, even human activities.
Interesting. So what did they believe about the world itself?
They thought the earth was flat and surrounded by water.
A very different perspective from ours.
Quite different. But it's fascinating to see how they tried to make sense of their world.
Okay, I have to ask, what about their art and architecture? What kind of legacy did they leave behind in that regard?
Oh, they were incredibly skilled artists and architects both.
Think of some examples.
Think about those intricate cylinder seals. They use those to mark ownership like a signature.
Okay, cool. What else?
Well, they also built these grand palaces adorned with sculptures.
Like ancient masterpieces.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have the ziggurats.
Those massive stepped pyramids.
The iconic symbols of Mesopotamian civilization dedicated to their gods. They must have been an incredible sight.
This is also fascinating.
I know, right?
So we've got these incredible innovations, this vibrant culture. Tell me about their societal structure. How did they govern themselves?
They were organized into city-states.
So like independent mini-nations.
In a way, each city-state had its own ruler, its own laws, its own way of doing things, and over time they developed some very sophisticated systems of law and governance.
You mentioned Hammurabi's code earlier. How did that fit into the picture?
Well, Hammurabi's code was like a blueprint for social order. It laid out a system of justice with specific consequences for different offenses.
So it was about more than just punishment. It was about establishing a framework for society.
Exactly. It's amazing how much we can learn about their values and priorities just by studying that code.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
From the wheel to writing to math to codified law, it seems that they accomplished so much. How did all of this impact the world beyond Mesopotamia?
Their innovations didn't stay put, they spread.
So like a ripple effect.
Exactly. The wheelwrighting these things traveled far and wide, influencing cultures across the globe. It's incredible to think about how much our modern world is connected to this ancient civilization.
It's like they planted the seeds of progress.
And those seeds took root all over the world.
It really shows you the power of ideas.
Absolutely.
So Mesopotamia's influence is undeniable. But what about the people themselves? The individuals who built this civilization, what were their lives actually like? That's what I'm curious about.
Now, that is a story worth exploring. The people themselves, the everyday Mesopotamians, what were their lives actually like? What did they do for fun?
Right? Did they have festivals, music? What made them tick?
Oh, they knew how to celebrate. They had tons of festivals throughout the year.
What kind?
Oh, all sorts, connected to the moon, the agricultural calendar, their mythology. It was a big mix of stuff.
For like religious rituals combined with seasonal celebrations?
Exactly. Some honored their gods. Others marked milestones, like planting or harvesting. And of course, no celebration would be complete without music.
Music, of course. What kind of music? Did they have instruments?
Oh yeah, we found all kinds of instruments in archaeological digs. Lyres, harps, flutes, drums.
Cool. So do we know what their music sounded like?
We have some idea based on the instruments and artwork that depicts musicians, but no recordings, sadly.
Ah, that's a shame. I'd love to hear what ancient Mesopotamian music sounded like.
Me too. It would be incredible. But from the evidence we do have, we can tell that music was a big part of their lives.
What did they sing about?
Well, some songs were hymns dedicated to their gods, others told stories about historical events, or even just everyday life. It was a way to express their beliefs, share their history, connect with each other.
Just like today.
Exactly. It's a universal language.
So it sounds like they had a really rich culture. What was family life like?
Well, like many ancient societies, Mesopotamia was patriarchal. Men held more power than women.
Did they have education?
Some did, primarily boys from elite families, or those training for specialized roles like scribes or physicians. Most boys, though, learned their father's trade.
And the girl?
They were trained in domestic skills.
So very defined roles for men and women.
Pretty much. But there were some interesting exceptions.
Really? Like what?
Well, despite that patriarchal structure, women actually had some rights.
Okay, that's not what I was expecting. Tell me more.
They could own property, for instance, and even initiate divorce in certain situations.
Wow, that's pretty surprising.
Yeah.
Challenges our assumptions about gender roles in ancient societies.
It does. It shows that things were a bit more nuanced than we might think.
So we've talked about life and death and family. What about the afterlife? What did they believe happened after you died?
Well, they definitely believed in an afterlife.
What makes you say that?
We found a lot of evidence in their burial practices. For instance, in the city of Arsenet, many people were buried beneath their homes with some of their possessions.
So they thought you took it with you?
Seems like it. We've even found graves with mats and carpets.
Wow. So they went all out.
In some cases, yes. Children were sometimes buried in jars within family chapels.
That's so interesting. It gives you such a personal glimpse into their beliefs.
It really does. And it speaks to the importance of family and lineage in their society.
It's amazing how much we can learn from these archaeological finds.
It is. It's like piecing together a puzzle.
So we've got these incredible innovations. We've got this rich culture. We've even touched on their beliefs about the afterlife. But it's easy to forget that behind all of that were real people, living their lives, facing challenges, trying to make sense of the world.
You're absolutely right. It's important to remember that these weren't just names and dates. These were individuals with hopes and dreams and feels, just like us.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So speaking of their world, let's shift gears a bit and talk about their economy. How do they manage their resources, conduct trade, build such a prosperous civilization?
Well, the Sumerians, those early city builders, they had some remarkably advanced economic practices.
Like what?
Their temples actually functioned as banks.
Temples as banks. It's
Yeah.
true, they developed systems of loans and credit.
So they had a pretty sophisticated grasp of finance. They did. And later, the Babylonians took it even further. They created a really complex system of commercial banking.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like they were way ahead of their time.
In many ways, they were. But remember, the foundation of their economy was still agriculture.
Right, the land between rivers. It makes sense that agriculture would be so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Tigris and Euphrates rivers were their lifeblood.
What did they grow?
All sorts of things. Barley, onions, grapes, turnips, even apples.
Sounds like they had a pretty varied diet.
They did, but those rivers were unpredictable.
So how did they manage that?
With their ingenuity, of course. They built these amazing irrigation systems using canals and dams to control the flow of water.
Another example of them adapting to their environment.
Exactly. They had to be resourceful.
So mastering agriculture was key to their success.
It was. It allowed them to produce surplus food, which led to population growth, specialized labor, the rise of cities.
It's like a chain reaction.
Precisely. One thing leads to another.
And let's not forget about trade.
Oh, right. Mesopotamia was strategically located at the crossroads of major trade routes, connecting east and west, north and south.
So they were like a hub.
Exactly. They traded agricultural products, textiles, manufactured goods with regions all over the place, Egypt, the Indus Valley.
It's amazing to think about those ancient trade networks spanning such vast distances, connecting cultures, shaping history.
It really highlights how interconnected the world was even back then.
Oh, wow. So we've explored their innovations, their daily lives, their religious beliefs, their economy. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Is there anything else we need to cover before we wrap things up?
Actually, there is one more fascinating piece of the puzzle. Their legacy. The influence of the Mesopotamians extends far beyond their ancient cities.
Okay, now you've got my attention,
You
all
bet.
ears. Okay, so tell me about this legacy. How did the Mesopotamians influence our lives today?
Well, it's a multifaceted legacy for sure. We often focus on their tangible inventions, the wheelwriting, but their influence goes much deeper than that.
So give me some examples. How are we connected to these ancient people?
Let's start with something really basic, time. Our concept of time. Remember how they use that base 60 number system?
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
Well, that's the foundation of our 60-minute hour and our 24-hour day.
No way. So every time I check my watch, I'm experiencing a little bit of Mesopotamian influence.
Exactly. It's pretty
Yeah.
mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Well, our 7-day week, that structure comes from the Mesopotamian calendar too.
Really? So they were the ones who divided time into weeks and months.
They observed the cycles of the moon and developed a calendar based on those cycles, a calendar that's still shaping our lives today.
It's incredible to think that something so fundamental to our lives has such ancient origins.
It is. It makes you realize that we're all part of this long, continuous story.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got timekeeping. What else?
Well, their stories and myths have also left a lasting mark.
Like the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Exactly. That epic explores themes of heroism, friendship, the search for immortality, themes that are still relevant today, thousands of years later.
It shows you that some human experiences are timeless.
They really are. And the Mesopotamians weren't just storytellers. They were also keen observers of the natural world. Their knowledge of astronomy and mathematics was incredibly advanced.
They're mapping the stars, right?
Yes, and tracking the planets.
Hmm?
And developing mathematical principles that would eventually influence the Greeks and, through them, the entire course of Western science.
So you're saying that the scientific revolution had its roots in Mesopotamia?
In a way, yes, it's a complex chain of influence. But the connections are there. And let's not forget about their legal systems. Hammurabi's Code, for example, has shaped our understanding of justice and law.
The idea of codified law with specific consequences for specific offenses, that's a direct legacy of Mesopotamia.
It is. Their fingerprints are all over our world.
It's amazing to think about.
It really is. It shows you that history is more than just names and dates. It's about understanding the connections, the influences, the enduring power of human ideas.
It's like a giant puzzle. And we're trying to piece together the past to understand the present.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe even get a glimpse of the future.
This has been such a fascinating look at Mesopotamia. I feel like I've learned so much.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
Learning is a lifelong adventure. The more you explore, the more you discover.
that's so true.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for being our guide on this incredible journey.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this exploration of ancient Mesopotamia. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring